Oh my God. I can't believe we're in Slovakia, but we are. Yasom Johnny Vedmore, as they would say in Slovakia. In Slovakia, it's Yasom to say I am. In Czech Republic, it's Yasem. In Poland, it's Yastem. And in Russia, it's Ya. So Russian made easy. And there you go. We've got, what's this? Who's that nun on the run there? The man dressed up as a nun. Is that Bill Gates? It looks like Bill Gates dressed up as a nun and voting in the Slovakian election. Can this be so? My God, which type of world have we entered into?
Above the polling booths, the traditional pan-Slavic colours of Slovakia's flag.
It was
The
Bill
election
Gates.
here was framed as about where this name booths.
Is Bill Gates? Wait a minute, here we go, here we go. Oh my God, is Bill Gates dressed up as a nun voted in the Slovakian election? Can you believe it? He's like, yeah, another bit of corruption done. I have conspired again. And the best thing is, if they move to an electric ballot, Windows will be the servers.
Colours of Slovakia's flag. The election here was framed as about where this nation sees itself in that history. Either.
Wow. Okay, a little bit of history. Shall we know a little bit of history? I think it was the Velvet Revolution in 1989, 1990, sort of that time where the basically Czechoslovakia, as it was then, the Czech Republic and Slovakia, one country, would separate in 1992 after the Velvet Revolution, would basically say, okay, we want to leave the Soviet Union and start looking west. And then the West started changing its values. Now, this is really important to history and where we're going in the future, because in those boxes, there's no ballots, there's just pasties. Nothing really matters. It's all going to stay the same, whatever, because there's a big war in all of these countries. In actual fact, Slovakia was one of the countries to be first flooded with the start of the NGO warfare by the West. Now, as the traditional values of the East change it's ingrained in the people. The Russians hold traditional value. A lot of the Slavic countries hold traditional values, traditional Christian values a lot of the time, and they see what's going on in the West at the moment, and they're like, wow, that's a nightmare we don't want. So where they once turned away from Soviet propaganda, now they're turning away from woke propaganda and going back to Russia. This is what will happen all over Eastern Europe. However many NGOs you have in there, the people want traditional values, and the NGOs will push Western woke values. And Western woke values don't even work in the West.
Looking towards the West or tilting back to the red, white and blue of Russia.
A choice between a return to the past, which is what Mr. Fico is offering.
So automatically, the return to the past, this is the first thing they've done, is get on the Western aligned politician, the guy who's taken his tie off to show he's approachable, but he looks like one of those many NGO Slovakians, Michael Semeka, and he's the leader of...
a road to international isolation, perhaps a shift eastwards in our foreign policy, or we can choose the future.
The alternative one,
the future.
Former Prime Minister Robert Fico.
Well, let's go back a second. I just want to... Oh, wait. I just want to find out. There you go. Progressive Slovakia. Progressive Slovakia. Now, that sounds just like the names you had of the NGOs afterwards, where, you know, they had all of the... That's what they do. Progressive. But that's the woke agenda. You can only push... people with traditional values so far before they push back.
The future.
The future. Dark for you guys.
Former Prime Minister Robert Fico secured 24% of the vote and can now try to form a coalition government. A stunning return for a man who resigned in 2018 following the murder of a Slovakian journalist.
Wow, a murder of Slovakian journalist. By who? He resigned over the murder of Slovakia. I'd like to know more about that story, but here they are. He's now returned, and he's a hero, is he? Or is he a villain? Well, to the Channel 4 News, I've heard he's a villain.
His win is also a shock to the system for Ukraine, because Slovakia has sent missiles, helicopters and fighter jets since the start of the war, and Fico has signalled a very different approach.
We are a peaceful country. We will not send a single round to Ukraine, and we will push for the European Union to use all its weight and support peace talks as quickly as possible.
Right, okay, so this is what aligning with Russia now looks like. We won't assist in killing the other side anymore. So, and we want peace talks to be pushed by the big powers. That's aligning with Russia. That's Russian sympathizer. He's a Russian sympathizer. He wants Ukrainians to stop killing people and being killed.
It is a crack in Eastern European support to Ukraine. As we go into European Parliament elections, these very polarized societies, like in
Oh, wow. Look at this. This is I'm pretty positive this is one of the German Marshall Fund creations. Oh, no. Oh, right. I just saw what it was. I didn't have my glasses on. I'm sorry. The German Council on Foreign Relations, one of the worst. I mean, I thought there was a whole European Council on Foreign Relations. I wasn't aware that there was a German Council on Foreign Relations. Maybe each of the regional councils on foreign relations in Europe meets in the European Council on Foreign Relations. One of the founder members of that was Daniel Korski, who's you want to look into. He's going for mayor of London. He also worked with Nicole Junkermann, one of the Epstein associates who went into business with Peter Thiel and Ehud Barak in Carbine 9/11, which will attempt to basically get between you and the police for the intelligence services of other countries, including Israel and the Mossad. And Milan Nikia is a Slovak analyst from the German Council on Foreign Relations. So Channel 4 ain't bringing you the best here, are they? This guy, look at that look on his face now. That kind of looks like Council on Foreign Relations.
Slovakia, are prone to be manipulated into by populist voters into this kind of stance against military support, which is a stance against.
Wow, that was such a word salad. We're gonna have to repeat what he says. This is one of those times. This German Council on Foreign Relations loon. We're going to listen to every one of his words. You want to listen to the people from the Council on Foreign Relations are the ones who are pushing the agenda. This is watch this word salad. Let's start off.
It is a crack in Eastern European support to Ukraine.
It is a crack in Eastern European support for Ukraine.
As we go into European Parliament elections,
as we go into European Parliament elections,
polarized societies like in Slovakia,
it's a very polarized societies like in Slovakia,
are prone to be manipulated into.
You are prone to be mismanipulated. Is that an error? Was he saying was a an accident or mismanipulated, where wrongly manipulated, a suggestion that he thinks is a right way to be manipulated? Yes, that's what I'm suggesting. That he's saying mismanipulated is like kind of double speak for it's not our kind of manipulation, because that's what it sounds like if you think about definition wise.
By populist voters into this kind of stance against military support, which is a stance
mismanipulated. All right, let's listen to that again.
To this kind of stance against military support, which is a stance manipulated into
mismanipulated into
this kind of
by populist voters into this kind of
stance against military support, which is a stance against continuation of
a stance against military support, which is a stance against
the war.
Continuation of the war. Good. It's a stance against. So why is mismanipulation? These guys, the way they speak, you've got to realize this is how they've always done it as well. And they say by populist leaders. He said by populist leaders. Well, these guys, Council on Foreign Relations and stuff, they make populist leaders, don't they? They're the ones who make populist leaders. So is it their populist leaders or is it a mispopulist leader?
This is just the latest bit of bad news for Kyiv.
Oh, look,
as the
it's
war
a hero
meets a new enemy.
Zelensky.
Western domestic politics, economics, and elections. Slovakia, along with Hungary and Poland, have all banned the importation of Ukrainian grain in order to protect their farmers who've been hit by cheap grain flooding the market. With Kyiv attacking Warsaw's stance, Poland's Prime Minister announced he would no longer send weapons to Ukraine.
Oh, Poland's Prime Minister, is he a progressive? I think he looks like I don't think Poland's Prime Minister can be described as pro-Russian, and he's no longer sending weapons to Ukraine. They're cutting it off. The Ukraine war is getting cut off because perpetual limited warfare. Time to rewrite the borders and the boundaries that were written wrong in the first place. Uh-oh.
Mateusz Morawiecki has elections in a fortnight, and he's worried about this. Thousands marching in opposition to his party in the capital today. Leader Donald Tusk has called for unwavering military aid to Ukraine, and the former EU Commissioner will be a much more comfortable proposition for both Brussels and Kyiv.
Wow, Donald Tusk, he's a dirty, rotten bastard.
And it's not just been a bad weekend for Ukraine in Europe. In the US, Congress applauded a last-minute deal that stopped the government from shutting down, but it didn't include extra funding for Ukraine.
So Ukraine is falling apart. And why is that? Because it was always perpetual limited warfare to distract you from the COVID agenda that had collapsed in front of you. Yeah, so as soon as the one PSYOP ended, a new PSYOP began. And this PSYOP is going to end and a new PSYOP will begin.
President Biden addressed that issue in a speech today.
Whoa, he nearly went flying through that
under any
door.
circumstance, allow American support for Ukraine to be interrupted.
Apart from they have.
In Kyiv today, citizens and soldiers stood to mark the Day of the Defenders.
It's over. It's over. The defenders. Are you the defenders? You have literally. I mean, me and Khan Disley wrote an article about this, and when this is really interesting because this is beginning and end point. In 1989, you have the start of the Czechoslovakian Velvet Revolution that would lead on to see the split of Czechoslovakia into Czech Republic and Slovakia, and then distancing themselves, of course, straight away from the dying Soviet empire that was next door. You saw that happen. You saw that happen because between 50 and 150 NGOs were set up in each country to force like destability or create a destable country where there was basically then a collapse in the political system, and a new political system that was already created by these Western backers could take over like they did. Now, by the time you get to Ukraine in 2004, they had taken out each of those NGO armies that they put in. Every time a revolution happened, they'd pick most of them up and they'd send them to the next country that needed pressure. So the amount of NGOs just kept growing and new ones just kept being created. By the time we got to 2004 in Ukraine, they had 30,000. This is by German Marshall Fund figures, their own figures. 30,000 NGOs working in Ukraine to destabilize it for the West. So this is what happens when all of those NGOs are now so distant, so far removed from traditional, or far enough removed from traditional values, that you start to see a break apart of things. And what you see is that the more traditional eastern part of Ukraine that was traditionally Russian leaning and associated with Russia and load of familial connections with Russia of the population who are living there, those people are now causing trouble and saying, no, we want to be away, and supporting Russia. And they're more, it's going to go. It's going to go. Eventually, you're going to have to accept that this NGO army is going to be rejected by even Ukraine eventually, even the strongest place. And you speak to Russians and Ukrainians about Ukraine and Russia in the 80s and 90s, and there was a lot of them feeling like they were cousins. They were very close relatives, rather than what's been created after all of this propaganda over the past 25 years.
Amid the blue and yellow, the stars and stripes. Here, they're well aware of the need for friends overseas. A moment for many to reflect on not just the pain of 20 months of war, but the uncertainty ahead, as Ukraine hopes to keep its army of allies together.
Look at all of these shots to try and show this. Oh, look, these heroes, Ukrainian heroes. It's over. You were taken by the West politically. You were annexed by the West. You are not in control of your own country. They haven't been for a long time. The people who took over Ukraine eventually were all aligned with Western power groups like that are also aligned with Council on Foreign Relations, USAID, National Endowment for Democracy, and all the other CIA bloody cutouts that are taking over the bloody world. Ukraine, just another one of them.